Look, I didn't wake up that morning thinking I was going to get flattened by fate. I woke up like any other self-respecting zebra on the savanna, mildly dehydrated, slightly itchy, and with one very clear goal in mind: don't get eaten today. My name, it's Zuberi. But no one bothers to remember the names of background zebras. We're just moving scenery to most animals. You know how many times I've been referred to as stripy guy or snack more for? Too many? And yet, somehow, I still showed up to that ridiculous sunrise event with clean hooves and a positive attitude. So let me set the scene for you. I had just finished my morning stretch. I'm talking full back-arched, tail-extended, neck-roll kind of stretch, the kind that makes you feel like you're one with the grass. The sun was rising, birds were harmonizing like they'd been rehearsing all week, and I had just spotted a perfectly untouched patch of dew-soaked grass. Breakfast was served. Baby, and then the drums started. Not literal drums. I mean the metaphorical kind. You know, the oh no, something theatrical is happening kind of drums. And before I could even blink, the entire animal kingdom was migrating to Pride Rock like it was the Coachella of the savannah. Now listen, I'm not a big group event guy. Too many hooves, not enough personal space, but I heard there was going to be free fruit, and I'm not about to turn down a papaya just because an ancient baboon wants to rub herbs on a lion cub. So I joined the crowd. Big mistake. Huge. You ever been in the middle of a crowd of wildebeest who just got their hair done and are trying to be seen? It's chaos. Everyone's bumping into each other, trying to get close to the front like Beyoncé's performing. And I'm there, stuck between an elephant with emotional baggage and a gazelle who keeps asking if this is going to be like an actual religious ceremony or more of a chill vibe. We're herded into formation like living puzzle pieces, and I somehow end up dead center. Right in front. Apparently, I'm photogenic. Or sacrificial. Still unclear. And then the drums actually start. It's that song. You know the one. That Nance Ngonyama Bagiti Baba one. I don't know what it means, but I swear it translates to prepare to get trampled. Zuberi, suddenly, every single animal is doing synchronized bowing, like choreographed submission. I didn't get the memo. No one emailed me the posture guide. 1 minute I'm chewing grass. The next minute the giraffe behind me drops like he's fainting. His neck sweeps across my back like a wrecking ball, and I go down like a poorly stacked stack of bananas. Trampled by a flamingo. Let me repeat that. I was trampled by a flamingo! Do you know how long it takes to recover your dignity after being stepped on by a bird that weighs less than your breakfast? I still get laughed at in watering holes. But the humiliation didn't end there. While I'm face down in the dirt, coughing up pebbles, everyone starts roaring and cheering. And I'm thinking, oh, good. Someone's noticed I'm dying. Maybe help is on the way. Nope, they're applauding Simba. That tiny furball just got held in the air like a furry, gluten-free baguette, and everyone lost their minds. Meanwhile, I'm underneath a warthog's butt, trying not to suffocate. Great timing. Destiny. Really crushing it today. Literally, when I finally stood up, my stripes were bent. My leg was numb. I had a clump of warthog tail in my teeth, and that baboon Rafiki or Ravioli or whatever actually stepped on my tail while exiting stage left like this was some Broadway production. No apology. Just vibes. Now, you might think that's where the story ends. Oh no, poor zebra got squashed during the circle of life, and now he's sad. But oh no. No, no, no. That was just the opening act. Because apparently, once you get trampled by a religious ceremony, the universe decides you're open for more nonsense. That day changed everything for me. I used to be a background grazer with low blood pressure and a strong sense of self-worth. After that incident, I became the zebra. You know, that zebra. The one everyone points at when the conversation gets awkward. Oh yeah, like the time Zuberi got pancaked by a flamingo. Ha ha. Very funny. Gary. I hope you choke on your cactus salad. And the worst part, no one even remembers I was there. You go back and watch the footage of that day, the movie or the painting or the epic scrolls or whatever they're calling it now, and I'm barely visible. One hoof. That's it. My big moment. Reduced to a hoof cameo. Do you know how many therapy termites I had to talk to about that? 15. 15 therapy termites. And one overly emotional squirrel who just wouldn't stop hugging me. But listen, I'm not bitter. Not really. I mean, sure, I flinch every time someone says circle or life or plays a drum. And yes, I have recurring nightmares where Rafiki shows up in my dreams wielding a stick and shouting, "It is time," while a crowd of giraffes stampede over my face. But other than that, I'm doing great. And if you think that's the end of my story, that I just got trampled and went back to grazing, oh, honey. No, that was only the beginning, because that little cub, the one everyone cheered for while I was bleeding under a rhino's butt cheek, he grew up and things got worse. So there I was, hobbling back to the watering hole with half a flamingo footprint permanently engraved on my back and a bruised ego the size of Mount Kilimanjaro. Every step I took sounded like a bowl of cereal being stepped on. Crunch, pop, regret. Now, the savannah isn't exactly rich in healthcare options. We don't have insurance or doctors. What we have is Gerald. Gerald is a giraffe. He claims to be a chiropractor. And by claims, I mean he once cracked a wildebeest's spine back into place while sneezing and decided that was his calling. He even has a business name, Neck and Back and sometimes Soul. His motto, I fix what fate breaks. I should have known right there. Anyway, Gerald sees me limping and flags me down with his neck, which is both impressive and terrifying. "Zuberi," he yells, his voice cracking like a puberty-bound rooster. "Heard you got symbolically crushed by the monarchy. Thanks, Gerald," I mutter. Glad to know my suffering is trending. He insists on giving me an adjustment. And because I had zero options and could no longer feel my left thigh, I agreed. This was mistake number 457 in what would become a very long list of mistakes that week. Gerald doesn't have hands. He uses his knees and occasionally his forehead. He told me to lie on a rock. I said, "Which rock?" He said, "Whichever one screams emotional trauma at you." I laid down on a lopsided one that smelled vaguely like lion breath, and before I could even ask about sterilization protocols, Gerald leapt onto my back. Let me say that again. A full-grown giraffe leapt onto my spine while yelling, "Alignment." I blacked out for 7 seconds. When I came to, there was a mongoose filming it with a leaf camcorder and whispering, "This is gold." To this day, I don't know if I'm more upset about the herniated disc or the unauthorized footage. Both still haunt me. Anyway, that night I limped home to my patch of grass. My cousin Zinzi was waiting for me with a look only family members can give you, half concerned, half judgmental. "You smell like hoof cream and crushed dreams," she said. "Thanks. Zinzi, good to see you too." She tried to be supportive. Bless her stripes. Gave me some eucalyptus oil and told me I needed to stop chasing significance. Easy for her to say. She married a wildebeest named Brad, who owns 3 termite mounds and runs a motivational speaking series for warthogs. I curled up and tried to sleep. But all I could hear were echoes of that song. Nance Ingonyama. It played on loop in my head like a cursed ringtone. Every time it reached the high note, I flinched and smelled flamingo. And then word started spreading. Simba, the royal fluffball who got held up like a sacrificial snack at a smoothie bar, was apparently going to be king one day. Great! Fantastic! Couldn't wait. You know what happens when royalty ascends? Infrastructure gets ignored. That's right. While everyone's busy singing songs and drawing paw prints on cave walls, do you think anyone's checking on the waterholes? The zebra migration routes, though. All that budget goes to painting the sunrise and leaf tapestry maintenance. A week later, my favorite grazing patch was converted into a symbolic drum circle space. The sign said, "Reserved for spiritual vibes and vaguely interpretive dancing." I lost it. I marched okay, limped angrily straight to the Pride Lands office of symbolic events. It's run by an egret named Cheryl. She files complaints with her beak and once dated a hyena for tax purposes. I said, "Cheryl, I've been trampled, adjusted by a giraffe, and emotionally terrorized by baboon-led pageantry. I want my grazing land back." She said, "Do you have a form?" "I have rage. Does it come in triplicate?" That's when I realized we're all pawns. Just background props in Simba's dramatic hero arc. I wasn't a character, I was terrain. And something in me snapped, metaphorically. My spine had already done that. So I made a decision. If I couldn't get attention by being trampled, I'd get it by talking. I started holding Trauma Tuesdays at the edge of the watering hole. Just a little safe space where animals could talk about the weird stuff that happened to them during all these grand events. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. A meerkat had a breakdown after Rafiki used his tail as a ceremonial paintbrush. A parrot had been trying to deliver a scroll during Mufasa's Roar Fest, and got wind-blasted into a cactus. Even a hippo claimed she was accidentally ordained as a priest after someone misinterpreted her sneeze. It was glorious. We called ourselves the B-Plot Collective, and we had one goal to finally be seen. Not trampled, not bowed over, seen. But of course, nothing in the savannah stays chill for long, because just as I was gathering momentum, just as Cheryl started asking for official group status forms, Simba went missing. Disappeared. Poof. Like a tuft of fur in a fan. And you know what happens when a prince disappears. Everyone panics. The weather gets weird. The hyenas start circling. The drum circles go quiet. And suddenly, everyone's blaming the circle of life for their unpaid bills and missing coconuts. And guess who they think cursed it? Me. Zuberi the Trampled. Zuberi the Loudmouth. Zuberi the accidental cult leader of the Trauma Tuesdays movement. Yup, that's when the rumors started. And what came next? Let's just say it involved a giraffe on stilts, a stolen feather crown, and the worst spa day of my life. So, you know how I mentioned that I started a little group called the B-Plot Collective, a safe space for trampled dreams and background character trauma. Yeah, well, apparently when a lion prince vanishes and the savannah's emotional thermostat goes haywire, anything vaguely organized starts looking like a threat to the monarchy. Which is insane. Because all we ever did at B-Plot meetings was snack on half-ripe mangoes and complain about Rafiki's overly aggressive wisdom stick. That's not treason, that's therapy. But no. The moment Simba ghosted the kingdom, animals started whispering Zuberi's been stirring the pot. They're planning a rebellion through interpretive jazz. I heard a warthog gave birth during a Trauma Tuesday, and they called it a prophecy. Okay, that last one is actually true. Her name's Doris. Sweet kid. Born mid-meeting while we were discussing existential dread in stampede formations. She sneezed 3 times, and the wind changed direction. And now everyone thinks she's the chosen one. Great! Now I have a baby warthog profit and 0 liability insurance. But I digress. Let me walk you through the week things went from we're a support group with snacks to we're now being followed by squirrels in robes. It started when Brenda, a hippo with big feelings and 0 boundaries, stood up during our meeting and said, "Zuberi, I had a dream about fire and fruit and a baboon falling into a mud pit. And you were wearing a necklace made of dried beetles. And instead of doing what normal creatures do, like nod politely and change the topic, the group started clapping. Clapping. For Brenda and her prophetic beetle jewelry vision. I tried to calm things down. I said, "Brenda, dreams are dreams. I once dreamed I was dating a flamingo who turned into a salad. Doesn't mean we form a religion about it. But nope, too late. The next day, she came to the meeting wearing a necklace made of dried beetles. She called it the Zuberi chain. The day after that, she brought 10 other hippos who had painted their hooves and started chanting stripy wisdom in unison. By day 4, we had a full-blown congregation. I was not okay. Meanwhile, Cheryl the egret from the symbolic events office showed up again, holding a scroll and flapping like she'd just witnessed a scandal. "Zuberi," she screeched. "This group is now considered a movement. You need a permit. Or at least a flyer." "A flyer," I said. "We're not a band." She squinted at me. "Then why is that meerkat playing a drum made out of coconut shells and existential dread?" "Touché. I tried to de-escalate." "I really did. I gathered the group and said, 'Look, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I am not a spiritual leader. I am not a guru. I am a zebra who got stepped on by destiny and emotionally manhandled by a giraffe.'" Brenda raised her hoof. "Yes, Brenda, if you're not a prophet," she said, "then how come everything you say makes me cry and question my marriage?" That was hard to respond to. Anyway, in the middle of this accidental spiritual awakening, guess who shows up? Rafiki. Yes, him, the baboon, the stick-haver, the sage of vague advice and aggressive backflips. He strolls in like he owns the savanna, doesn't even look at me, just sniffs the air, taps Doris the baby warthog on the nose with a mango pit, and shouts, "The storm comes from within," then vanishes in a puff of dramatic wind and acacia petals. What does that even mean? Everyone loses their minds. One of the squirrels starts hyperventilating and declaring himself a leaf shaman. Gerald the giraffe tries to interpret the prophecy using his knees. Brenda starts writing a book. I'm just standing there with a beetle necklace and no idea how my life spiraled so hard so fast. And here's the kicker. The real reason the Royal Circle of Life people got mad, it wasn't the beetle necklaces. It wasn't the chanting hippos. It wasn't even the underground art show we hosted featuring lion kings that could have been... No! It was because the Royal Stampede reenactment performance, a yearly tradition led by trained antelopes, got cancelled because we had accidentally double-booked the watering hole. Apparently, the sacred gallop of ancestral memory was bumped by our event titled Trauma Tuesdays Emotional Stampedes and Snacks. And let me tell you, you haven't lived until you've been scolded by a warthog in ceremonial eyeliner named Krieg, who believes you dishonored the antelope ballet. So what does a zebra do when he's been falsely accused of starting a cult, spiritually outshined by a warthog toddler, and is now banned from multiple ceremonial rocks? He runs. Not away. I'm not that dramatic. I mean, he runs for representation. That's right. I announced my candidacy for Animal Delegate of the Overlooked, a totally fake position I invented just to give myself a title. My campaign slogan, "No more background characters. We deserve close-ups." It got weirdly popular. Squirrels printed shirts. Tortoises did slow parades. A water buffalo built me a podium out of bark and mild rage. For the first time in my trampled little life, I felt powerful, until someone told Scar, "Oh yeah, Scar, Mufasa's brother, eyeliner enthusiast, snark connoisseur, the guy who looks like he lives permanently inside a sarcastic Yelp review. And guess what? He invited me to dinner. Just me, him, and apparently a plan, because when a power-hungry lion hears there's a zebra gaining influence among the masses, he doesn't trample you, he recruits you. And what happened at that dinner? Well, let's just say the menu included betrayal, termite mousse, and the beginning of the end for my emotional safety. You ever walk into a room and immediately know you've made a mistake? Yeah, that was me the second I arrived at Scar's so-called casual dinner chat. First red flag, there were no chairs. Just a flat stone with suspicious scorch marks and a hyena butler named Reggie who offered me savory bone dust sprinkles like that was a normal thing. Second red flag, the dinner table had exactly one place setting mine. Scar, meanwhile, was reclining dramatically on a jagged ledge above me, as if he was auditioning for Real Housewives of the Elephant Graveyard. "Oh, Zuberi," he purred, voice like a villain who majored in theater arts and minor passive aggression. "What a pleasure. I've heard whispers." "Cool," I said, trying to smile while also scanning for exits. "I've heard roars." He laughed. It was the kind of laugh that makes your tail curl inward. Then Reggie returned with a silver platter that absolutely did not belong in the savanna. He lifted the lid with the flourish of someone who had once poisoned a wedding cake. "Termite mousse," Scar said, raising an eyebrow like he'd invented fine dining. "Imported. From the shadowiest part of the Shadowlands." The mousse wiggled. "But look, I was starving. Between Brenda's hippo cult and Gerald's failed chiropractic attempts, I hadn't had a proper meal in days, so I took a bite. Big mistake. It tasted like betrayal and birthday candles. While I tried to smile through what I can only describe as flavored despair, Scar began pacing in slow, ominous circles, his tail flicking like an evil metronome. "You've made quite the name for yourself. Zuberi, an inspiration to the overlooked, a symbol of the underhoofed, a minor celebrity among beetle artisans." "Thanks," I croaked. He stepped closer. "And you know what the thing about fame is? It's so fleeting. Unless you give it purpose?" I coughed. "Define purpose." Scar grinned like a hyena that just found out brunch was unlimited. "What if I told you," he said, "that I plan to redistribute the power level the food chain, make it less lion-centric. Now, I'm not the brightest coconut on the tree, but even I knew where this was going." "So you're overthrowing Mufasa," I said, already regretting every life decision since birth. He waved a paw. "Overthrow is such a strong word. Let's say a smooth transfer of gravitas." "And you want me to, what, start a petition?" "No. Zuberi," he said, voice soft, eyes glinting. "I want you to be the voice of the movement, the face of the future, the stripe in the revolution." I blinked. "You want me to be your influencer?" He leaned in, smiling like a crocodile offering relationship advice. "Exactly. Now, let's pause for a second. Here's what was going through my head. I'm just a zebra. I got trampled during a sunrise. I've eaten exactly one wiggly moose, and now my stomach is negotiating a civil war. A literal villain is asking me to be his brand ambassador for a hostile regime change. But here's the thing, Scar made it sound good. He talked about equality, and representation, and zebra-led podcasts. He promised official seating at royal events, safer stampedes, even a line of branded water troughs with my face on them. I was high on termite mousse and attention, so I said yes. I said yes. Within a week, I was on propaganda leaflets. Posters, mural walls badly painted, they made me look like a confused badger. I had a catchphrase, "No more backlegs. It's time we led." Gerald the giraffe made hats. Brenda started writing a musical. Squirrels carried me in a leaf throne to rallies. Someone even made a chant. "Zebras now lions, wow, Scar's the king. We know how—" Okay, the rhyme scheme needed work. But here's where it all unraveled. We planned a rally at Sunset Rock. Scar gave me a speech to read. It was long, dramatic, lots of words like liberation and punctual vengeance. I was supposed to deliver it with gravitas. Instead, I had a breakdown halfway through because a moth flew into my eye and I shouted, "The moon is spying on us," in front of 200 animals. The next day, Rafiki showed up, not with a stick this time, with a scroll. He unrolled it dramatically in the middle of my spiritual mindfulness for former background characters seminar and declared, "The winds have shifted, the cub lives, and the stripy one has been misled." And then he smacked me, gently, symbolically, right between the ears. That slap was the beginning of the end. Suddenly, the chant squirrel stopped showing up. Brenda gave a TED Talk titled, "Why My Hooves Were Never Yours to Lead." And Scar ghosted me. Like, full blackout. Blocked me on bark messages. Unsubscribed from the B-Plot newsletter. Sent Reggie to collect the beetle necklace and left a note that said, "You were too sparkly for subtlety." It broke me. I spent 3 days under a shrub, eating bitter leaves and listening to motivational termite tapes. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Simba came back, the real prince, grown roaring. looking like the cover of Savannah Digest Rugged Edition. Suddenly, it was all about him again. The prophecy. The comeback. The mane. And me, back to the background. Again. But something in me had changed. I wasn't just Zuberi the Trampled anymore. I'd tasted power, moose, purpose. So I made a decision. If I couldn't lead Scar's revolution, I'd start my own. And this time, it wasn't going to involve any moose. Let me just start by saying this. It was not my fault. I know that's exactly what someone who caused a stampede would say. But seriously, if I had known that a motivational leaf circle could turn into a riot, I would have brought fewer drums. Let me back up. After Scar ghosted me like an emotionally unavailable tiger on a dating app, and Simba reappeared looking like a lion who'd just returned from a CrossFit retreat, I realized I had two choices. Fade back into zebra obscurity, where my biggest daily challenge would be trying not to fart too loud during grazing. Reinvent myself. I chose option 2. I told myself, Zuberi, you don't need power. You need purpose. You need to give back. To heal the kingdom. To fix what Scar broke and Simba forgot. So I launched a movement. A peaceful one. A gathering of animals tired of conflict, tired of monarchy, tired of being stepped on emotionally or literally. I called it the Gentle Hoof Society. Our motto, tread lightly, breathe deeply, snack often. We met under the old baobab tree that used to be Rafiki's think spot before he relocated to somewhere more mystical. Translation, a rock shaped vaguely like a reclining baboon butt. At first, it was beautiful. Just me. Brenda still wearing beetle necklaces, but in a purely fashion-forward way now. Gerald the giraffe, who had rebranded as a neck-based meditation coach, and a couple dozen followers who wanted nothing more than to decompress from all the kingdom drama and maybe sip some calming nectar. We did breathing exercises. We shared stories. We chanted things like, I am not just the background. I am the brushstroke in the painting of the wild. I am more than hooves and stripes. I am the rhythm beneath the roar. Psha. Okay. Yes. That last line was mine. I was really leaning into the poetic stuff, and things were good until we got popular. You know what happens when something peaceful starts trending? Animals show up with expectations. Suddenly we had meerkats doing spoken word, impalas filming TikTok dances in front of the tree, and 2 peacocks running a smoothie bar called Chakra Punch. It got crowded. I tried to keep things chill. I really did. But by the 3rd week, we had 35 flamingos, a porcupine influencer, and 1 very loud mongoose who claimed to be translating cosmic vibrations. And then, the drums. Not symbolic drums, real ones, crafted from hollow logs, dried melon rinds, and 1 questionable turtle shell donated. I swear, one of the squirrels, Kiki, I think got really into rhythm-based therapy. Next thing I know, she's teaching Stomp Out Your Feelings classes and encouraging everyone to channel their inner thunder. Which, okay, fine, catharsis. But maybe don't hold that class next to a watering hole during wildebeest migration season. Because, my friends, the thing about wildebeests, they don't process sound. They respond to it, usually by running, fast, in every direction. So picture this. I'm mid-affirmation chant. Brenda is blessing the beetles. Gerald is doing gentle neck yoga. And suddenly, boom, 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 30 animals start stomping and chanting and releasing their generational trauma onto the earth. The ground shakes, the air pulses, and a herd of passing wildebeest thinks they're under attack by invisible lions with percussion skills. They run through the ceremony, over the snack table, over Gerald's folding stool, and straight over me, again. Now look, the first trampling hurt physically. This one hurt my soul, because this time I was in charge. This time I had insurance forms and sign-in sheets. This time, I had a laminated badge that said Gentle Hoof Society, founder visionary, not responsible for injuries. But none of that mattered once I got a porcupine quill lodged in my eyebrow and a smoothie stand collapsed on my tail. The aftermath was pure chaos. Peacocks sobbing over spilled chakra punch, flamingos screaming in interpretive despair, a tortoise who got flipped onto his back and just kept yelling, "This is not my journey." And worst of all, Simba heard about it. Of course he did. He showed up 30 minutes later with his new PR assistant, a deeply unamused egret named Tilda, and a full security detail of lions wearing leaf pins. He looked at me with that calm, slightly pitying expression that kings always have when talking to creatures with beetle-based jewelry. "Zuberi," he said. What happened? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I couldn't tell him the truth that I had tried so hard to do the right thing, that I just wanted to matter, that all I ever really wanted was a small patch of grass to call my own, and maybe a newsletter. Instead, I whispered, "I think the drums were too loud." Simba nodded slowly. Tilda made a note on her leaf pad. "They left, and the Gentle Hoof Society disbanded. Turns out if you cause 2 stampedes, they revoke your community gathering privileges." Brenda went solo. Gerald moved to a tree farther away to reset his aura. The squirrels now run a for-profit mindfulness retreat called Hush. And me, I sat in the ruins of my wellness empire, sipping spoiled nectar and wondering if this was it. If I was destined to go down in history as Zuberi the Trampled. Twice. But just as I was about to spiral into full existential hay-munching mode, a stranger approached. Tall, slender, dark mane. Eyes like they've seen stuff. Nala, Simba's old friend, the real brains of the kingdom. She looked at me, sighed, and said, "I think we need to talk." So, Nala, there's a presence to her. You know, like she could either heal your childhood trauma or dismantle your entire self-worth with a single eyebrow raise. She doesn't even walk. She glides, like a lioness who already knows the outcome of the conversation and is just waiting for you to catch up emotionally. She approached me while I was curled up under a half-collapsed beetle tapestry, surrounded by discarded affirmations and the sour smell of fermented nectar. My mane was matted. My dignity was mostly theoretical. "Zuberi," she said calmly, like she was addressing a student who brought a lizard to show and tell again. "We need to talk." I said nothing. She sat down beside me, which was disorienting, because powerful lions don't usually sit next to disgraced zebras unless there's an imminent pouncing involved. "I've been watching you," she said. Now, normally that would be flattering, except she said it in the same tone a disappointed ant uses when she catches you singing karaoke to impress a warthog. "I get it," I muttered. "You're here to revoke my last remaining patch of moral high ground." "No," she said. "I'm here because Simba won't say what needs to be said." Oh, great. So she's not just judgmental, she's a messenger of truths. My favorite kind? She looked me dead in the eye. "You've become a symbol." I perked up. "Thank you. Not a good one." "Oh, you started out fine," she continued. "You spoke up. You told your story. That mattered. Thankoi. Then you turned your trauma into a brand, a movement, a smoothie stand. Okay, technically, Brenda opened the... And then you let a literal villain recruit you because he complimented your stripes and gave you mousse. It was artisan mousse. Nala. She stared. I cleared my throat. "Sorry. Please continue." "You don't see it," she said, shaking her head. "But you've become what you hated. A distraction. A sideshow. All noise. No message. And the worst part, she was right. Somewhere between Trauma Tuesdays and the stripy wisdom chant, I stopped trying to make a difference and started trying to be famous for trying. My movement had more decorative feathers than actual goals. My followers were mostly squirrels looking for free snacks and attention. I sat there in silence, feeling every inch of the emotional hoofprint she had just stomped across my soul. Then Nala softened. "Just a little." "I know you mean well," she said, "but the kingdom's a mess. Scar broke more than just traditions, he broke trust. And Simba's still figuring out how to rebuild it." I blinked. "But Simba's the king now. He's got the roar, The hair, the slow-mo walk. Roars don't fix droughts, she said. Or hunger. Or the fact that half the animals still don't feel seen unless they're being sung about in a dramatic sunrise ceremony. Oh, okay. So I sat there, chewing that thought like a tough patch of overgrazed grass. Then Nala leaned closer. You want to help, actually help, then do the boring stuff, the hard stuff, not the chanting and the drums, the organizing, the listening, the part where no one claps. I nodded slowly. You're saying I should stop being the main character? She raised an eyebrow. Zuberi, you were never the main character. That stung, but also fair. Okay. I said, what do you want me to do? She stood up. There's a food distribution council forming. They need someone who knows how to rally animals without scaring off the wildebeest. That feels like a pointed jab. She smiled. You'll manage. And just like that, she padded off into the distance, tail swaying like a metronome of moral clarity. So now I was, what a logistics zebra, the hype beast of humble policy. No more chants, no more smoothies, just spreadsheets and grain ratios and trying to figure out how many porcupines can fit in a storage cave without emotional outbursts. But you know what? It kind of worked. I started small. I partnered with a well-organized warthog named Dolores, who had been running an underground leaf inventory since Scar's regime. We created a basic resource map. We held community meetings where no one chanted, but everyone brought snacks. We set up a barter system mangoes for medicinal moss, acacia bark for rainwater buckets. We assigned Gerald a non-dangerous role as aesthetic signage coordinator. It was the least dramatic thing I'd ever done. And it felt good. Even Brenda came back. She brought beetle-based energy bites and only quoted me twice. Progress. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. That this calm was just the eye of the storm, because I'd heard the whispers, animals grumbling about Simba's leadership, about the circle of life not circling fast enough, about whether the kingdom needed a council, not just a king. And one night, while we were unloading dried banana peels into the communal compost hill, a shadow appeared. Tall, scarred, with a voice like sandpaper dipped in sarcasm. I see you've reinvented yourself. Zuberi. It was Scar, alive, smiling, and not alone. I want to preface this by saying that I was finally in a good place. After years, okay, weeks, but they felt like years of being trampled, manipulated, slapped by baboons, and emotionally dragged by lions. I had settled into something resembling peace. My hooves didn't shake when someone said circle of life. Brenda stopped calling me spiritual father. Gerald learned boundaries. Life was almost normal, so of course, Scar returned from the dead. The first thing I saw was his shadow, long, dramatic, the kind of shadow that says I'm back. And yes, I brought mood lighting. Then came his voice, dripping with smirk. Zuberi, he purred. Still the face of the movement. Or have we downgraded to treasurer? I turned around slowly, partly because I was stunned, partly because I had a mild cramp. There he was, Scar, looking slightly thinner, probably from hiding in the outlands, but somehow more moisturized. His mane had volume, his eyeliner flawless. Honestly, it was rude. Behind him, hyenas. At least 6. Including Reggie, the butler. He winked. I felt dirty. And in his mouth, a rolled-up bundle of leaf scrolls, which he dropped in front of me like a lawyer presenting exhibit a regret. What is that? I asked, praying it wasn't another moose recipe. Scar smiled. A plan, a vision, and a presentation that frankly deserves a standing ovation. He gestured to one of the hyenas, who began unrolling the leaves onto the dirt like a weird little TED Talk made entirely out of twigs and bark crumbs. It was a PowerPoint. No. Really. Scar had built a slideshow, hand-painted, annotated, footnoted with titles like Thor. The monarchy has broken time for a council of carnivores. Zebras, not just snacks. Also spokespeople. Hoituam. 10 ways Scar's return. Benefits the ecosystem slide, Oincha will shock you. And there, smack in the center of slide 3 was my face. My face, smiling. Under the label Revolutionary Voice of the Future, formerly stripe-based ornament. Mondethon naum bonton. Why am I in this? I asked. Voice high, tail twitching. Because, Scar said, circling me like I was a hesitant entree, you represent the masses. You've rallied them before. You speak for the grazers, the overlooked, the flattened. He leaned in, and this time, we do it right. No theatrics, just power. A hyena behind him coughed, then lit a ceremonial leaf sparkler. Scar glared at him. Minimal theatrics? He clarified. I backed away. No. Nope. I'm done. I've been trampled, emotionally used, spiritually repurposed, and nearly sued by a squirrel for ritual confusion. I run a grain distribution committee now. I am healed. Scar raised an eyebrow. You're healed, or you've just accepted being invisible again. Oof! Direct hit. He paced. Do you know what Simba's doing right now, staring at clouds, talking to Ghost Dad, ignoring infrastructure? His last council meeting ended with a mongoose crying because he wasn't invited to a metaphor. I was at that meeting, I muttered. It was a very confusing metaphor. I offer you clarity. Scar said, a place at the top, not as my pawn, as my partner. Now look, I knew this was manipulation. Scar's brand of politics is like a smoothie made of flattery, lies, and just a hint of betrayal zest. But damn it if he doesn't serve it chilled and with a little umbrella. Still, I hesitated, and that's when Nala appeared, like a storm in cat form. Step away from him, Scar, she growled, or I swear on every sunrise ceremony in history, I will claw your internal metaphors into external reality. Scar didn't flinch, just turned toward her, all smirk and showbiz. Ah, the Queen. Ever the poet. I'm not here to poet, she snapped. I'm here to end your leaf-based nonsense. They stared each other down. You could feel the tension, the kind of tension that makes grass stand up. Somewhere, a warthog fainted. And me, I was stuck in the middle. Literally, between Nala noble, rational, justice-driven, and Scar shady, seductive, and offering me a custom-built throne made of sustainable bark. So I did what any emotionally scrambled zebra would do. I panicked. I have to pee, I shouted, and galloped into a nearby shrub. I stayed there for 3 hours. In that shrub, I questioned everything. My journey, my decisions, why beetle-based smoothies are legal. Eventually, Brenda found me. She gently nudged me with a jar of eucalyptus balm and said, Zuberi, you're trending again. What did I do now? You cried in a shrub and refused power. Some animals are calling it the heroic hesitation. There's a mural forming. Oh no, not again. That night, I didn't sleep, partly because I was lying on a cactus, but mostly because I knew Scar wasn't done. He didn't just want power, he wanted legitimacy, and if he couldn't get it through Simba, he'd use me. But if I played this right, if I leaned in, just enough, I could find out what Scar was really planning, and stop it. Maybe, or maybe I'd get trampled a third time. So, big breath, I decided to spy on Scar. Yep, me, Zuberi. The zebra who once got concussed by a ceremonial fruit plate and cried at a sunset, I was going undercover. I told myself it was noble, brave, heroic, even. But if I'm being honest, it was mostly because I didn't want to get trampled a third time. And Scar had that look in his eye, the I'm planning a dramatic betrayal with jazz hands look. Now, did I know anything about espionage? No. Had I ever read a scroll about secret codes, infiltration, or not blurting out emotionally compromising information mid-sneezing fit? Also no. But did I once memorize the mating calls of over 17 bird species to win a trivia game? Yes, so I figured I had the skill set. The plan was simple. I'd accept Scar's offer to join his new regime officially titled The Circle Reimagined Bold, efficient, slightly edgy, and act like I was all in. Meanwhile, I'd feed intel back to Nala and the Resistance, which was basically her, 3 very stressed flamingos, and a warthog named Keith who kept trying to unionize termites. Scar gave me a title, Minister of Hope and Narrative. I don't know what it meant, but it came with a little woven badge and a seat at the Strategic Vision bonfire. So I said thank you and hoped no one noticed I was sweating. At first, it was surprisingly chill. Scar didn't roar. He didn't bite anyone. He just sat on this jagged rock throne, sipping beetle tea and unrolling scrolls with slogans like "Eat less," "Rule more," and "We're all carnivores inside except literally. Please don't eat herbivores." I sat in on planning sessions, which mostly involved Reggie reading out confusing economic strategies, while Scar muttered things like, "Yes." But how does that feel visually? I took notes. So many notes. Half were intelligence reports for Nala. The other half were doodles of myself wearing sunglasses and saying things like, "Justice never grazes alone." My spy code name Stripe Noise. Brenda came up with it. She also made me a spy cape out of discarded palm leaves. It was loud, very not stealth. I loved it. Anyway, here's where things got complicated. Scar wasn't just building a power grab. He was building a narrative. Posters, songs, a traveling puppet show. All of them painted him as the misunderstood visionary, the one who dared to challenge the old roararchy. That's his term, not mine. He loves puns. It's exhausting. And me, I was everywhere. In leaflets, in chants, in a biographical ballad performed by hyenas with interpretive scarves. Oh, Zuberi, so stripy and true. He was trampled once, but now he chews truth. I tried to stay focused, tried to blend in. But Scar was charming in that I'd definitely betray you by Act 2 kind of way. And the hyenas, they weren't just goons. They were tired, hungry, left out of Simba's kingdom. Some of them were reading poetry. One gave me a haiku. Scar saved my ankle from a log during a storm. He also pays us. Touching, weirdly effective. It got harder to tell the good guys from the bad guys. Simba's kingdom had order, yes, but it also had bureaucracy. The last time I tried to report a broken water trough, I had to fill out 6 forms and submit an emotional intention statement. Scar, he just yelled, "Fix it or eat it," and it got done. Was it great governance? No. Was it faster? Absolutely. And then came the big plan. One night, Scar summoned me to his private lava-lit grotto. Yes, that's real. It smells like drama and sulfur. And said, "I want you, Zuberi, to speak at the Unity Summit." The what? A meeting between my animals and Simba's. Peace talks. I blinked. Is that a thing now? He smiled. Oh, it will be. You'll speak first. You'll be the bridge. My internal organs immediately filed for divorce. This was it. The moment, the peak of his plan. He wasn't going to fight Simba. He was going to undermine him. Publicly, symbolically, with me as the bait. I ran straight to Nala. Well, limped, stealthily. We met in a hollowed-out log around midnight. Keith the warthog stood guard. He had a whistle made from a bird skull. It was not reassuring. Nala listened carefully as I laid out the whole plan. The summit, the speech, the weird musical number Scar had planned involving percussion fruit. She nodded, slowly, then said, "We let him do it." What? We let the summit happen, she said. But we write the speech, our speech. You want me to sabotage his peace summit with words. She smiled. You said you wanted purpose. This is it. Suddenly, I wasn't just a spy. I was a weaponized zebra with narrative potential. We spent the next 2 days crafting a speech. Honest, raw, weirdly poetic. It had truth, heart, 3 separate beetle metaphors. And the night before the summit, Scar pulled me aside. He said, "I knew you were special. I knew you'd change everything." He looked proud, almost fatherly, which was super weird. Because 5 weeks ago he tried to use me as a decoy in a rhino stampede reenactment. But I nodded, smiled, and said, I'm ready. Because I was ready to stand in front of both sides of the kingdom, and either unite them, or get eaten alive by a hyena choir. The Unity Summit took place at Dusk Rock, a very dramatic name for what is basically a glorified hill with decent lighting. It was a lot. There were banners, fruit arrangements, an emotional meerkat playing the rain stick. Scar's entourage showed up first, all sleek and broody, like they were cast in a soap opera called As the Pride Turns. They stood in matching cloaks made of smoke-colored leaves, very coordinated, very sinister. Then came Simba's crowd, brighter, cleaner, noticeably more hydrated. They wore nothing but intense moral superiority and glowing fur. I arrived late, mostly because Gerald insisted on giving me a motivational pep talk that involved neck yoga, and he got stuck in a tree mid-gesture. As I stepped onto the stage, which was really just a flattened boulder with a decorative fern, I could feel every single eyeball in the kingdom on me. Hyenas, lions, antelopes, parrots with clipboards. Even Rafiki had shown up and was already meditating aggressively under a fig tree, like he knew someone was about to make an emotional breakthrough. Scar sat front row, smiling with the kind of confidence that says, I bet you stuck to the script. I hadn't. Not exactly. I took a breath, cleared my throat, and said, My name is Zuberi, and I have been trampled, twice, spiritually like 6 times. There was a murmur, possibly concern, possibly hunger. I continued, I've stood in every corner of this kingdom. I've been a victim, a mascot, a beetle-based brand. I once joined a political revolution by accident because someone complimented my spine. Laughter, nervous, from the squirrel section. I locked eyes with Scar. He smiled, tapped the corner of his leaf scroll like, Get on with the pitch. I turned away. No more scripts, I said. No more songs. No more choreographed ceremonies where background animals just exist to clap for chosen ones. Now Simba shifted in his seat. Tilda, his PR egret, started writing very fast. We keep getting told the circle of life is sacred. But let me tell you something, that circle has flat parts. And sometimes it runs you over. Literally. The 3 hyenas in the second row nodded solemnly. One dabbed his eyes with a leaf napkin. I paced the rock. Scar offered us change. Simba offered us tradition. But the truth is, both of them forgot about us, the middle. The awkward, the not quite majestic but still craving snacks crowd. At this point, a porcupine shouted. Yes, Stripes and a flamingo fainted, from passion or blood sugar unknown. So here's my pitch, I said. Voice louder now. Let's stop waiting for someone else to fix the kingdom. Let's stop bowing, chanting, roaring, and reenacting someone else's prophecy. Let's fix our own waterholes, share our own mangoes, make our own murals even if they're bad. More murmurs. Someone yelled, Bad art is still art. I took a final breath. I'm not a king. I'm not a prophet. I'm not even a good public speaker. I once held a peace rally that turned into a stampede and a fruit fight. Light laughter. But I know this, we're tired of being extras in someone else's saga. So let's write our own, with snacks, and fewer flamingos. A hush fell. Then, clapping. Not thunderous, not slow-motion movie clapping, just real awkward, sincere hoof-on-dirt clapping. Then a squirrel threw confetti made of torn leaflets. And then all chaos broke loose. Scar stood up, furious. You went off script, he growled. Simba stood up too. He told the truth. Reggie the hyena panicked and blew a kazoo. We never found out why he had it. Scar leapt onto the boulder, his mane flaring like he'd practiced that entrance in a mirror. You think these animals want equality? They want order? They want to be led, inspired, ruled? I backed up slowly. Then Nala stepped forward. Then they can be ruled, she said, by someone who doesn't need a puppet zebra to do it. And with that, I kid you not, Rafiki stood up, hit his staff on the ground, and shouted. The meeting has been emotionally completed. There was silence. Then, as if the savannah collectively agreed to end on a high note, everyone started hugging. Lions hugging gazelles, warthogs hugging squirrels, Gerald hugging a tree, Scar, realizing his drama was no longer trending, vanished into the dust with a swirl of his cloak and a dramatic HMPH that echoed like a flopped theater audition. And me, I stood there, stunned, holding my beetle necklace and wondering if I had just saved the kingdom or caused an emotionally charged group nap. Nala came over and bumped my shoulder. "You did good? You sure?" She smiled. 3 hyenas cried and 1 fainted. That's basically a standing ovation. The next morning, the murals began. Not just of kings, not just of roars, but of us. The B-plot collective, the background noise, the snack carriers, the emotionally unstable zebras with big feelings and bigger metaphors. And somewhere deep in the savannah, Scar rewrote his leaf PowerPoint. Again. You'd think after I emotionally dismantled a political villain with words, made hyenas weep, and walked away without being trampled for once, I'd get, like, a break, maybe a hammock, maybe a humble statue made of ethically sourced mud. But no, instead, I got a holiday. Yep. The newly formed Unity Council for the formerly ignored voted unanimously. It was me, Brenda, Gerald, and Keith the Warthog. So 3.5 votes total to create a special celebration. Zuberi Day, a day to honor not just me, but all the background characters who made the savannah function while main characters were busy singing solos on cliffs. I cried, not full-on antelope-level sobbing, but enough that a termite handed me a tissue and whispered, "This is our moment." The idea was simple: 1 day a year where everyone grazers, flyers, background harmonizers gets the spotlight. No roars, no drama, just snacks, hugs, and emotionally appropriate dancing. And the first Zuberi Day was a disaster. Let me walk you through it. Hour 1, the procession of the overlooked. This was supposed to be a gentle parade where minor characters walked slowly through the savannah, while others clapped appreciatively. What happened instead? An antelope named Frankie Tapperson, who had been in exactly 1 scene in the background of the original Circle of Life moment, showed up in a sequined leaf suit and started tap dancing aggressively. He brought his own drums, his own backup flamingos. He performed a 12-minute interpretive number called Zuberi. But make it art. It was not great. There were lifts. There was glitter. At one point, he threw a coconut in the air and yelled, "This is how I felt in Act 2. The coconut hit Gerald. He fell onto a fruit display and cried for 20 minutes. Hour 2. The honoring of the unsung. This was meant to be a storytelling circle. Everyone could share one unnoticed thing they'd done to keep the savannah running smoothly. It started fine. A pelican shared how she once unclogged a dam using only her beak and prayer. A tortoise talked about managing 3 warthog sleepovers in 1 night. And then, Brenda got up. She had prepared. She rolled out a leaf scroll labeled, "All the Times I Saved Zuberi from Himself." It was 14 feet long. By the time she got to the part where she emotionally mopped up his post-Rafiki identity spiral, the crowd had begun quietly grazing just to cope. A squirrel in the back muttered, "I came for beetle snacks, not an intervention." Hour 3, the Feast of Gratitude. Here's where I should have known it would go wrong. Because the moment you say the words potluck and no lions allowed to dominate the conversation, you're setting up for chaos. Some highlights. Keith the Warthog brought fermented mango dip, which caused 3 flamingos to see visions and start a conga line they never finished. A mole family interpreted bring something sweet, as bring emotionally vulnerable poems. Reggie the hyena showed up in a cloak made of recycled posters from Scar's propaganda campaign and tried to apologize through dance. It was a lot. But then Simba showed up. Unannounced. No roar, no cape, no PR egret. Just him. Quiet, nervous, holding a small bundle of leaves and a look that said, I know I didn't RSVP, but I brought a thing. Please don't yell. The crowd froze. Even Frankie Tapperson stopped mid-routine and fell into a split from sheer panic. Simba stepped up to me, cleared his throat, and said, Zuberi, I brought you this. He handed me the leaves. Inside a single scroll, Decree 47B, all animals are canon. He had passed a law, a real one. That background characters, from assistant stylists to wandering zebras, were officially part of recognized kingdom history. Their stories archived, their contributions counted, even the leaf flyers included. I blinked. Simba, are you making me historical? He smiled. You always were. I just forgot to say it out loud. Okay. I sobbed, openly, into Brenda's mane. Even Gerald cried, though it might have been concussion-related. But in that moment, surrounded by weird dancing, accidental mushroom tea, and at least 4 creatures who had once doubted my basic value, I felt something I hadn't felt since the first stampede. Seen, and maybe that's all any of us want. Not to rule, not to roar, just to know that when the music plays and the circle spins, someone sees us standing in the grass, not as scenery, but as someone who matters. Even if we trip, even if we cry during the closing song, even if we occasionally start accidental cults. That night, we danced, we howled, we ate questionable pie, and for the first time, I didn't feel like Zuberi, the background zebra. I felt like Zuberi the legend. You ever think you've had your character arc? That you've been through the trials, faced the fire, cried in a bush, and come out the other side a fully evolved zebra? Yeah, well, apparently not. Because the morning after Zuberi Day, the chaotic, emotional roller coaster of food, interpretive dance, and reconciliation legislation, I woke up with a hangover made of fermented beetle punch and someone pounding on my treehouse door with a coconut gavel. Zuberi, Brenda bellowed. Wake up, history's knocking, and it's very loud. I stumbled to the door. Leaves in my mane, still wearing the honorary sash someone gave me that read, Hooves of Hope. It was backwards and sticky. Brenda stood there, wide-eyed, holding a scroll that bore the royal seal Simba's face drawn in profile, dramatically lit by artistic moonlight. Very tasteful. She unrolled it. I blinked. You're being nominated for Regional Herd Liaison, she said. I blinked harder. What does that even mean? She gasped like I'd just asked what a sunrise was. Zuberi, it's a position on the new Unity Council. You'd represent all grazers, roamers, stompables, and semi-scenic mammals across the kingdom. I didn't apply. Brenda beamed. Exactly. They chose you. You're a symbol now. A trusted hoof. I started hyperventilating into a fruit husk. I mean, I had just emotionally peaked. I gave the speech of a lifetime, held hyena's paws, emotionally healed a squirrel, and even reconciled with Simba. I had the perfect exit arc. And now, they wanted me to enter politics. The one thing more dangerous than Scar and a loose warthog with a xylophone combined. But Brenda was already tying my hair back with ceremonial twine and muttering things like media training and legacy messaging. Gerald was in the background trying to arrange palm fronds into a campaign slogan. Graze in peace was vetoed immediately. Later that day, I was summoned to the Council Grove, a fancy meeting spot under an ancient acacia tree, with natural skylighting and excellent acoustics for dramatic size. There were 5 other candidates. A dignified antelope named Maribel, who used the word synergy unironically, a water buffalo with a megaphone and trust issues, a meerkat in a suit made entirely of recycled grass, a stoic tortoise with a 400-page platform that no one had finished reading, and Frankie Tapperson, tap-dancing antelope, sequins and all. Frankie smirked at me from across the grove and whispered, "Game on, Stripey." I started sweating. Simba, who was chairing the proceedings, stood up and said, "We're here to select the voice of the future, someone who knows what it's like to fall and rise." I swear he looked directly at me. I looked around. Nope, just me. The interviews began. Maribel gave a speech about resource allocation and hoofprint carbon offsets. The meerkat talked about installing leaf Wi-Fi. The tortoise began reading page 6 of his manifesto, and 2 hyenas passed out. Then Frankie got up, and of course, he tap-danced his entire speech. It was upsettingly charismatic. There were rhymes, there was jazz fruit, a flamingo fainted again, and then it was my turn. I walked up. My mane was slightly crooked, my voice cracked. My ceremonial badge had gum on it. I took a breath, and I said, "Hi, I'm Zuberi. I got trampled. Twice. By life, and by actual hooves, and I learned it hurts. But it also teaches you how to stand up slower, but smarter." The grove went quiet. I'm not polished. I'm not perfect. I once ran a spiritual wellness movement that accidentally summoned a thunderstorm and also a squirrel choir. But I care. A lot. Maybe too much. But that's the point. Because the middle of the savanna, the part without drama, or slow-motion roars, or destiny anthems still matters. I paused, and if I can help make this place just a little kinder, a little quieter, and a little less dance-based, then yeah, I'll serve. Brenda burst into applause. Gerald wept openly and used a squirrel as a tissue. Even Simba gave a tiny nod, the kind that says, "Yeah, okay, you're not a disaster anymore." The vote, unanimous, except for Frankie, who claimed his tap shoes were emotionally opposed. So now, I'm an elected official. My job making sure grass gets distributed fairly. That meetings don't end in stampedes. That background animals have a place to voice their weird, tiny, meaningful problems. Also, I chair the Committee on Unexpected Confetti Use. It's not glamorous. There's paperwork and meetings. And once a week I get yelled at by a goat who believes the sun is jealous of moonlight. But it's real. It's mine. And it means that every time a young zebra looks up at Pride Rock, they don't just see a lion with perfect hair. They see someone like them. Someone who stood in the background and then stepped forward. Politics, it turns out, is mostly meetings about meetings. If you're lucky, you get a snack halfway through and no one cries during public comment. If you're unlucky, a porcupine filibusters for 6 hours using only interpretive hissing, which, and I cannot stress this enough, happened twice last week. But despite the noise, the posturing, and the one mongoose who insists on addressing everyone with my lieges, I was doing it. I was governing. Me. Zuberi. The zebra who once got emotionally manipulated by a baboon with a stick and lost a beetle smoothie franchise to a squirrel. I had a desk, a nameplate, a to-do rock with stuff written on it in bark ink, and my big project, the Equal Grazing Initiative. Catchy, right? It was simple: redistribute underutilized grassland in the kingdom so that everyone, not just the fancy front-row grazers, had access to good, moist, shade-adjacent grass. You'd be amazed how political grass can be. As soon as I proposed the initiative, the backlash was instantaneous. The elite grazers, antelope with generational land access, and gazelles with multi-level leaf storage were furious. They formed a coalition called "Keep Our Lawns Sacred" slogan. We trotted here first. Meanwhile, the undergrazed porcupines, squirrels, tiny deer with names like Glip were thrilled. One called me the Che Guevara of grass, which was flattering until he offered me a handmade beret and asked if I'd lead a symbolic nibble-in at sunrise. I said no. He did it anyway. The issue spiraled quickly. Suddenly there were leaflets, actual leaves, obviously flying through the kingdom. Some pro-Zuberi. Share the sod. Stripes for the soil. Down with overgrazing, up with mid-grazing. Others, not so pro-Zuberi. Zebra more like Z-bureaucrat. We won't share clover with clowns. He cried during his own parade. Can we trust him with grass? It got messy. Then Scar's former intern, a lemur named Finley, came out of the woodwork and claimed I'd once emotionally compromised a shrub council by hugging too hard. The press had a field day. Tilda, the PR egret, held a press conference, where she just blinked aggressively for 10 minutes while Simba massaged his temples in the background. The worst part, Gerald turned against me. Yes, Gerald the giraffe. My chiropractor, my emotional support skyscraper, my occasional poster model. He said, and I quote Zuberi, "I support equity, but if I lose my Sunset View snacking patch, I will riot with my entire neck." He did not speak to me for 3 days. And Brenda, she went full activist. She showed up at council meetings in protest paint made from crushed berries, carrying a banner that read, "My hooves, my habitat." She also organized a community theater performance called The Grass Screams 2, where she played the role of oppressed clover. It was a lot. I began to unravel. I started questioning everything. Did I go too far? Had I become the villain? Was I just a slightly more verbose scar with better fur hygiene? The night before the vote, I sat alone by the watering hole, staring into the moon's reflection like it might give me plot advice. And that's when Rafiki appeared. I didn't hear him arrive. 1 minute. Silence. The next. There he was, upside down in a tree, peeling a mango with a sharp stick and humming something haunting in D major. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "Zuberi, the grass you seek to move may not wish to move." "Okay," I said, "but can you say it in fewer riddles and more legislation?" He laughed and threw the mango core at me. Then he said, "You cannot fix everything, but you can choose what not to break." And with that, he vanished into the trees like a cryptic Yelp review. But it hit me. I didn't need to force change. I needed to build consensus. So the next morning, I stood in front of the council, eyes twitching, tail trembling, dehydrated from stress dreams, and gave one last speech. "Fellow creatures," I said, "I'm not trying to steal your grass. I'm trying to make sure no one's starving next to a picnic." I paused. I believe in sharing, not shaming. I believe in hoofprints over headlines. I believe every creature, from gazelle to mole rat, deserves 2 things: sunlight and snacks. I took a breath, closed my eyes, waited for chaos. Instead, applause, slow at first, then louder, then full-on synchronized stomping. Even Gerald wiped a tear and whispered, "He's still annoying, but he makes a point." The council passed the initiative barely with 7 votes for 6 against, and 1 abstention because Keith fell asleep mid-debate. We started redistributing grazing zones the next day. Not perfect, not revolutionary, but real. Animals began rotating pastures. Squirrels stopped hoarding leaf coupons. And for the first time ever, Glip the deer didn't eat grass from the edge of a mud puddle. It wasn't glory, it was governance. And somehow, that felt better. But just when I thought I might finally settle into a life of calm administrative work, a messenger owl landed at my feet. Panting, wild-eyed, he said, "Zuberi, it's your family. They're coming. From the far herd. All of them, and they think you're famous. There are few things more terrifying than the words, 'Your family is coming,' especially when your family is from the far herd. Let me explain. The far herd is not a place, it's a lifestyle. It's where zebras live off the grid, graze organically, and send each other hand-drawn newsletters made of bark and emotional guilt. They believe in natural hoof alignment, argue about stripe purity, and name their children things like Leaf Echo and Thunder Rejoice. And now, they were headed here, because they heard I was famous. And by famous, I mean one distant cousin saw a poorly drawn mural of me giving a speech next to a warthog juggling turnips, and assumed I had become the ruler of the entire kingdom, which is absolutely not true. But try telling that to Aunt Makari, who once disowned her brother for overcooking ceremonial moss. The moment the far herd arrived, the vibe of the savannah shifted. They came in with drums. They came in with incense made of mystery herbs. They came in singing a traditional family greeting chant called Hoofprints of Destiny, which, by the way, is 23 minutes long and features interpretive sneezing. And leading the procession was none other than my mother, Matlala. Now, I love my mother. She once chased off a lion with nothing but side-eye and an opinion about his posture. But subtle she is not. Zuberi, she called across the plains. Look at you, my little background baby. Now the whole kingdom trembles beneath your narrative arc. I died inside. Slowly, publicly, a flamingo dropped its coconut drink. A squirrel gasped. Gerald actually curtsied out of sheer panic. Mom, I hissed. Please stop yelling about my narrative arc. But she was already embracing me aggressively and turning to the crowd like she was accepting an award. This is my son, she declared. He once got trampled by a prophecy, and now he's the hoof that balances the circle. Brenda cried. Frankie Tapperson tried to join the family by claiming he was technically part zebra in the soul. Simba watched from afar, sipping aloe tea like this is why we can't have nice councils. Over the next few days, my life unraveled. The far herd took over. My cousin Sifo tried to re-energize the grass by yelling at it. My uncle Themba installed a spiritual wheelbarrow in the community garden. No one knows what it does. It hums. My grandmother Bibi held an impromptu workshop called Forgiveness Through Interpretive Hoof Stomping and accidentally summoned a rainstorm. They set up a camp, a massive one, tents made of woven bark, chimes that screamed in the wind, a ceremonial circle where every evening they discussed my journey from invisibility to iconicity like I was a zebra-based saga. And me, I started hiding in the council supply shed. Tilda the PR egret found me there one afternoon, clutching a clipboard and muttering, "If anyone brings me another gourd of ancestral soup, I'm going to self-exile to the termite hills." She peered in, still famous. I nodded. She sighed. You know, most animals would kill for this kind of attention. I looked at her with the eyes of a hoofed creature who had seen things, felt things, eaten ceremonial bark pudding while being serenaded by a harmonizing auntie quartet. It's not fame, I said. It's cultural hostage-taking with percussion. Later that evening, Nala approached me during the twilight grazing hour. She'd just finished de-escalating a family-led gratitude march that blocked the watering hole. "I'm proud of you," she said. I blinked. "For surviving," she smiled. "For showing the kingdom that leadership isn't about roar, it's about rhythm." I liked that. I also liked that she brought a small peace offering, a cup of actual, non-fermented nectar. We sat there, quiet, just two animals trying to keep the savanna stitched together with diplomacy, patience, and the occasional community bake-off. But of course, just as I started to relax, Matlala, my mother, came galloping over, eyes wide, nostrils flaring with big emotional momentum. "Zuberi," she panted, "there's a problem. Please don't say prophecy. No, worse." She handed me a scroll. It was heavy, dramatic, written in golden ink made from beetle resin. At the top, in bold, nomination for Supreme Kingdom Stewardship Summit position, Grand Mediator of the Realms. I blinked, hard. What does that even mean? She gasped. "It means they want you to run the whole show, not just a council seat, the realm, all of it." Simba had apparently opened a nomination for a symbolic co-governing steward, a way to bridge the gap between royal edicts and grassroots communities. It was ceremonial, mostly, unless the animals really voted, which they now could, thanks to a new initiative called Hooves and Voices, which I may or may not have approved while distracted by grass redistribution reports. Suddenly, I wasn't just Zuberi the liaison. I was Zuberi the potential realm runner, Zuberi the visionary, Zuberi the front-runner. Brenda appeared behind me, holding a campaign slogan banner that read, "Trampled no more. It's time for a zebra score." Gerald was already composing the theme music. I looked at the scroll, I looked at my family, and I said the only thing I could say in that moment. "Does this come with dental? Quackwis? Let me just get this out of the way. I never wanted to run for Grand Mediator of the Realms. It sounds fancy. Yes, like I'd sit on a soft moss throne, hand out justice with calm, measured eyebrow raises, and occasionally wear a tasteful ceremonial necklace. But the truth, it's a full-time job managing a bunch of dramatic forest mammals, a dozen under-caffeinated policy squirrels, and at least one mole who thinks he's a reincarnated waterfall. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, the job didn't even exist until I was nominated for it. That's right. Simba, in an effort to be more inclusive and emotionally progressive, created a brand new role as a symbolic bridge between the monarchy and the rest of the savanna. You know, someone to translate the roars into rules. Guess who he had in mind? Me. Zuberi, a zebra who once confused a fruit basket for a tribal offering and cried on stage during a tap dance competition. And then because nature hates peace, 4 other candidates entered the race. Let me introduce them. Penelope the peacock has her own leaf-sponsored talk show. Ends every sentence with, and that's the shimmer standard. Rhubarb the porcupine, anti-everything, communicates mostly in passive-aggressive poetry and thorns. Thistle the lemur, tiny, unsettling, claims to channel the voice of the moon. Frankie Tapperson, yes, him, again, running on a platform of jazz-based governance and interpretive zoning. And me. My platform was, let's all calm down and share snacks like grown mammals. The first event was the great debate held under the ancient fig tree, moderated by Rafiki, who wore a ceremonial hat made entirely of moss and meaning. He began by ringing a small bell that sounded suspiciously like a crying beetle. "Welcome," he said, "to the decision of destiny. Also, please do not feed the emotional squirrels." Penelope opened the debate with a sparkle burst. Literally, her tail glittered. I don't know how. She smiled with the confidence of someone who once gave a TED talk about feather mindfulness. "Friends," she said, "do we want shadows or shimmer fear, or fashion mediocrity, or majesty?" The flamingos screamed! Like, screamed! Then Rhubarb stood up and read a poem called "Democracy is a Lie," woven of mango fibers and false promises. It was uncomfortable. One squirrel wept and buried itself. Thistle the lemur stood next and stared into the crowd for a full minute in total silence before saying, "The moon accepts my candidacy." Which, honestly, was the best campaign line I've ever heard. Then it was Frankie's turn. Oh no! He tap-danced his entire platform. He clicked. He spun. He recited zoning bylaws while pirouetting on a leaf. He used jazz claws. Leadership. He sang, "Is rhythm and reform." Baby. A mango exploded from the sheer energy. And then Rafiki said, "Zuberi, speak." My legs shook. My tail twitched. Brenda nodded fiercely from the front row, holding a beetle-shaped Vote Stripes sign. I cleared my throat, and I said, "Hi, I'm Zuberi. I'm not glamorous. I don't shimmer. I don't tap." Penelope smirked. Frankie moonwalked in the background. I got trampled. I got up. I cried. A lot. And somewhere in all that, I learned that leadership isn't loud. It's listening. It's awkward. It's crying with porcupines and solving leaf disputes with exhausted warthogs named Keith. Keith raised a hoof from the crowd. "Yo, and if you elect me, I won't promise magic. I won't promise glory. But I will promise snacks at meetings and fairness for everyone. Even the guy who keeps stealing ceremonial figs." A tortoise nearby shuffled away suspiciously. I paused, and then I panicked. "Also," I said, "free mangoes. For everyone. Forever." The crowd exploded. A chant began. "Zuberi, mango, Zuberi, mango." Frankie dropped his tap shoes in shock. Penelope's shimmer dimmed slightly. Brenda collapsed from joy. Tilda the PR egret just whispered. He did what now into her wings. After the debate, Rafiki pulled me aside. "You did well," he said. "Also, the mango thing, reckless." I blacked out. I could tell. Later that night, I walked alone to the edge of the savanna. Stars above. Crickets gossiping. And I thought about everything. Where I started. Where I stumbled. Where I might be headed. And I realized I didn't want the role. I didn't want the tiara. Penelope definitely had one ready. What I wanted was for everyone else to finally feel what I had fought so hard for. To be seen. To be heard. To be more than background grass. And if I had to lead them there, Even if I made terrible snack-related campaign promises, even if I had to debate a moon-possessed lemur and a peacock with choreography, then so be it. I was Zuberi, and somehow, I was still standing. Election day arrived like a squirrel with too many emotions early, twitchy and loud. The entire savanna turned out. Even the termite mounds held watch parties. Flamingos painted their legs with slogans. A rhino wore a shirt that just said, "Hooves." No one knew what it meant. Everyone respected it. Simba opened the ceremony with a short speech about shared destiny and letting the voices of the kingdom lead. He said all the right things, but he looked nervous, like he knew he was one poorly organized ballot away from a grassroots tap-dancing coup. And there I was, standing on a podium made of responsibly harvested bark, wondering, what happens if I win? Would I become the face of a new kingdom? Would I get trampled again? But this time by expectations. Would I finally get reimbursed for all the beetle smoothies I'd paid for out of pocket? And then Rafiki stepped forward with a scroll tied in ceremonial vine ribbon, cleared his throat, and shouted, "The animals have voted." He paused. For drama, of course. Grand mediator of the realms is Penelope the peacock. The savanna erupted. Feathers, glitter, music. Frankie Tapperson collapsed from emotional choreography. Penelope stepped forward in a flowing ceremonial cloak made of palm fronds and softly glowing algae. Her victory speech included the words, illumination, featherocracy, and thank you to the shimmer within. She looked radiant. I looked like I had just realized I left mangoes off the actual budget. Brenda rushed over. Zuberi. Are you okay? Should I initiate the Sad Stripe support protocol? No, I said, stunned. I'm good. Actually, I'm great. Because in that moment, I realized something wild. I didn't want the crown. I wanted the crowd. I didn't need a title. I had a legacy. One made of awkward speeches, emotional breakthroughs, bad smoothies, and enough strange side quests to fill 12 scrolls and a moderately successful traveling puppet show. So what did I do? I opened a snack cart. Yep, right outside the Unity Council chambers. It's called Hoof and Snack. We serve beetle protein bites, mood-balanced fruit wraps, and a rotating menu of political gossip served cold with nectar drizzle. Every order comes with a tiny scroll that says, "You matter more than the main characters." It became a hit. Council members came by to decompress. Activists stopped by to rant politely. Gerald designed the logo. It's just my face winking, very unsettling but memorable. And me, I get to listen, to help, to hand out free mangoes on Zuberi Day and offer napkins during emotional breakdowns. Because in the end, I didn't need to be king, or prophet, or tap-dancing legislature legend. I just needed to be me. Zuberi, the zebra who got trampled at sunrise, who stood back up at twilight, and who now, every single day, tells the animals lining up at his cart, "You're not background, you're the story. Also, please take your smoothie. You're holding up the line.